Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ namasami. Good evening and blessings to everyone. Another opportunity to come together and practice meditation, chant and listen to the Dhamma. It's always, when we practice the Dhamma, it's always with the aim of uplifting our mind, improving our state of mind, and bringing up knowledge, direct knowledge of the truth and understanding to help us find more inner peace and free us from stress and suffering. The role of chanting and reciting suttas and verses of Dhamma has always been an important role since the time of the Buddha. There's one occasion when some of the monks went out to stay in the forest, and they probably didn't prepare themselves very well. They went and stayed in a new place, and they set up their camp, and immediately everyone fell ill, and there was a terrible smell in the forest which made them feel worse, and their stomachs were churning. In the end they became so weak, so ill, they had to go back to the monastery where the Buddha was staying. So when they returned, the Buddha asked, why do you look so pale, so ill? And they said, well, there was this terrible smell and we felt ill. It was a very kind of negative energy there. And the Buddha asked, well, what did you chant and spread thoughts of loving kindness when you arrived in that forest? And the monks had to admit they didn't, or they didn't do it very well. So that's when the Buddha gave them the teaching on loving kindness that we just chanted a few moments ago, as both a reflection and a protection, and just psychologically a very skillful way to go and when you go to a new place, to chant that reflection, bring it up in your mind, puts your mind in a very good space, develops a positive energy for going into a new place. When you're beginning your meditation, to bring up the thought of loving kindness has a very powerful, good effect on your mind. So that's a tradition that's been around since the time of the Buddha, chanting suttas and recollections to calm the mind, settle the mind, and also particularly when we're in a new place, new environment, new situation, or just when we're about to begin a new session of meditation. Such a chant can put us in the right frame of mind. As you'll notice, if you practice meditation regularly, you sit down, close your eyes, try to turn your attention to your meditation object, such as the breath or the word Buddho, for example. That instruction, or that remembering that instruction to do that, to put your attention on the breath, is fairly straightforward, but depending on what's been going on in your mind up to that point, your meditation may go well or not so well, because much of the time we're not so aware of ourselves, and depending on what we've been doing in our day, the conversations we've been having, the work we've been doing, the activities we're involved with, and the attitudes and thought processes we've brought to all that, and well, that will influence us as we begin a session of meditation. So you may sit down with a good intention to bring up mindfulness, set aside all your attachments and desires and negativity, and further your practice of the path to develop calm and insight. But that's just your starting point, and you may have a whole negative train of thought, negative emotions coming up based on what else has been going on in your day, and your mind may be very scattered, full of doubts, full of worries and anxiety, maybe sleepy. Any number of what we call mental hindrances may arise right at the beginning of your meditation. So it's always good to assess and note your state of mind as you begin to practice meditation. On the outside, you may be sitting still, you close your eyes, turn your attention to the breath, but straight away you're dealing with many different mental states, and many of them are not going to be that wholesome or skillful. So like those monks in the forest, the Buddha gave the sutta, the Karaniyamata Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness, as a very good preparatory meditation for going into a new place, just to set the right tone, the right mood in the mind of the monks, the right mental energy, and maybe even anyone else, animals, devas, other beings in that forest would also be affected well when hearing the calming, soothing words of the sutta chanted by the monks. So it's a good way to prepare your meditation, is just bring up a reflection of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, either chanting or just as your own internal reflection, to help counter a lot of the distracted states of mind, negativity that you may bring with you, the conversation you're having with you as you begin your meditation. Sometimes the way we describe the sort of internal dialogue that goes on, and the views and opinions and attitudes we bring to our meditation. The monks have a shorthand term for this. We call it ditthi mana. Ditthi means views and our attachment to our views and opinions. Mana means conceit or sense of self. And as soon as we begin our meditation, we sit down, or if we're doing walking meditation, we start walking. Our ditthi and our mana, our attachment to views and opinions and our conceit, our ego, manifests immediately. It's there, it's right there, and now we're facing it. Whereas before, perhaps we were distracted or doing other activities, not so closely watching our mind. But as soon as you begin a session of meditation, you're seeing your mind very clearly, and your views and your sense of self come up immediately. And that's a challenge. So why not meet that challenge with a good attitude? So beginning a meditation with developing the thought of kindness and compassion is a very skillful way to begin the meditation. Just as those monks having to face an unfriendly forest, unpleasant smells, unpleasant reactions from the local animals or beings, they use loving kindness to calm their minds so that their meditation could progress. And we have to do the same with ourselves. Maybe the unpleasant smell is the smell of our own negativity, and our irritations, our frustrations come up like a bad smell in the mind. And we have to learn to be patient with that and develop awareness, skillful states of mind, and some skill in paying attention and examining what's going on. And to do that, we have to have mindfulness, practice bringing up states of mindfulness, awareness, so we can pay attention to our own mind. And you'll notice when you put effort into bringing up mindfulness, say turning your attention to the breath, then you can see what's going on. And before your mind races to react with aversion or seeking distraction, seeking something else away from your current state of mind, you bring up the mindfulness just to pay attention to what's there and accept it. Because when you have loving kindness or compassion in your mind, you're able to accept what's there much better. Just as a parent can accept their child even if the child is being naughty or foolish or running around making a mess, if you have a thought of kindness, compassion as your underlying intention as you begin your meditation, well, that will give you both the strength, the tolerance, and the right attitude to deal with your own states of mind as they arise. Just like kids, hyperactive kids, or naughty kids, or just kids doing their normal things. Your own thoughts are like that, but you're bringing the right attitude of love, care, and attention to your own mind to set up the right attitude at the beginning of the meditation, and to give you the ability to tolerate negativity that may arise. Because when we're not mindful, we tend to believe and hold on to every thought. We become that thought, that train of thought, that mood, that emotion, we become it. And we sell ourselves stories about who we feel we are, good or bad, successful or failure, how we think about other people, the stories about the world around us and our life. Much of our time when we're not very mindful, we're following and believing in those stories, and they don't bring us too much clarity on understanding or peace. They tend to just keep the mind agitated and even can lead to disappointment because we're not gaining any peace or understanding if we follow all these endless trains of thought rooted in greed, anger, frustration, worry. So the Buddha encouraged us to establish goodwill, kindness, bring up mindfulness and put effort into bringing up mindfulness, and then to be patient with whatever is coming up into our experience, whether it's physical feelings of physical pain or discomfort that quite often will arise, mental irritation, distraction, which may also arise, to have the right attitude to deal with them, the patience, the mindfulness, the tolerance, and then the effort, the virya. The Buddha said really we need to make that wholesome, skillful effort if we want to train this mind to get it to a better place. So if you are experiencing a lot of distraction, negativity, we have to come back to putting in effort. And virayena dukkhamaccheti, suffering and stress is overcome by putting forth effort. And that's a tricky one because often when we are feeling stressed, not very peaceful, and we notice it, our first reaction is to recoil and feel disappointed with ourselves and think, oh, I can't meditate, I've got no mindfulness, no samadhi, I'm no good. We recoil and we go into further negativity. Negativity begets further negativity. Or we get irritated because we're irritated. We get disappointed because we're not peaceful, and so on. Often it's a downward spiral. So we need that virya, that effort, the loving kindness, the patience, and then the effort to meet our state of mind if it's not very peaceful, but to accept it and then meet it with clarity and mindfulness. And that requires effort to bring it up. But it's worthwhile because that's often where you see the Dhamma and you gain understanding right there in your meditation when you change the attitude towards your own state of mind. Where you were getting irritated or worried or disappointed before, by putting in the effort to bring up mindfulness, you can find a place, a space in the mind where you're tolerant and aware, without judging that negativity and the lack of peace in the mind, but just knowing it. And that's the best and the quickest way to let it go, is just knowing a state of mind as being impermanent, unwholesome, not self, to be let go of. By having enough awareness to see and to do that, one returns to a place of peace, and then one knows that for oneself. Oh, I let go of that train of thought, or that worry, or that anger. And that's one of the most valuable insights and understandings human beings can have. And if you're developing that kind of skill regularly in meditation, then that becomes part of who you are. At first it may still be part of the story that you're telling yourself who you are. Oh, I am the one who meditates and I've let go of some anger today, so I'm better off, I'm more peaceful. Well, we can't help it. We often have a running commentary on what we're doing. But eventually, the more you do it, well, the less you need that running commentary and description going on in your mind of what you're doing and telling yourself a story, and you're just doing it. And all our teachers, from the Buddha down to the present day, say when your meditation develops and the presence of mindfulness, awareness, clear understanding is there, it's present, the sense of the self doing something, being something, becoming something is disappearing. And there's this more sense of just natural awareness through the repeated effort, bringing up mindfulness, applying it. Gradually this sense of just knowing the mind without a sense of self, without telling oneself a story all the time. It's like this, it's like that. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm better, I'm worse. And this is where these two qualities, ditthi and mana, our attachment to views and the sense of self, are fading, if only temporarily. And we get a lot of peace from that. And when we attach strongly to the sense of self, well, we tend to have more internal conflict. We have views about ourselves, and if we are not meeting our expectations, we tend to feel annoyed or self-critical, unhappy with what's going on in our life. Or it may be leads to conflict with others. If we have strong sense of self and our opinions and views, we attach to them strongly, give them a lot of importance. Well, when we meet other people who have different views, we tend to disagree, argue, have conflicts in one way or another. So this way of practicing meditation is liberating. It's helping to liberate ourselves from the causes of suffering in almost a very simple way, but very direct way that we can see and know for ourselves when we're doing it. As I said, the more we practice, the more one might experience times when the mind is just quietly being mindful of physical and mental experiences that are arising, but without this sense of self, and the commentary and the storytelling drops away, and one is just knowing experience. There may still be pain in the body, there may still be distracted states of mind, but the mind is not making anything out of them. It's just knowing them. What we call unentangled awareness, or knowing one's experience without getting involved with it. And the more we experience that, the more we can experience the freedom of the mind just knowing without a sense of self. So it feels like the mind is getting a nice rest from the voice, the commentary, the running commentary. Often we get tired of our own voice, don't we? We get tired of our own thoughts, views and opinions, just as we get tired of other people's views and opinions. But even when we're on our own, we still get tired of our own. But when you experience more mindfulness and that drops away, you're just knowing in a more pure, more clear way. And that's very peaceful, and it gives us a lot of positive energy, even gives us a lot of, you might say, hope, or self-confidence in the practice, because you can start looking at your experience in a slightly different way than usual. Normally we're just lying to ourselves all the time. We're creating stories and views and opinions about everything in the world. Most of the time it's outside about what we see our life is on the outside, our relationships to other people, what we want to do, our work, our family, the world around us, politics, whatever it is, entertainments as well. Constantly forming views and opinions and commenting on everything around us, and then feeding that back into how we view ourselves, who we are, whether we feel we're successful or not, we're a happy person or unhappy, and so on. Normally we're doing that, but when we practice meditation and we experience some mindfulness and put effort into experiencing just the knowing of very ordinary experiences, but with a mind that is not cluttered by all the self-commentary, self-aversion, self-aggrandizement, what we call ditthi and mana. When that drops away, then we're just knowing experience and seeing it in a new light. Same old body, same old mind, but now looking at it in the way the Buddha was encouraging us to, because then you can really understand truth about yourself, the way things are. And number one is so much suffering drops away when you have established mindfulness. Maybe there's still some commentary going on in the back of your mind, but you're not getting so involved in it. There's a sense of detached awareness or knowing. The mind is more restful and it doesn't have to take everything so seriously. Every view, every opinion, every sense of self. Mana is conceit, and the Buddha said when you have conceit, a sense of self, well then you tend to have this sense of me, myself, and then others. Once you have that, then you have comparing, competing, better than, the same as, worse than. And a lot of our suffering is based around that, how we look at ourselves in relation to the people around us, at work, family, society, neighbours. And we're constantly competing, comparing, and that feeds more of this commentary. So sometimes we're feeling very inferior because we look around at others and we're sure they're better than us, enjoying life better, more successful, even though they may not be, but that's just the perception we develop based on our conceit. Or sometimes we go the other way and I know more than them, I can do more than them, I'm better than them, I earn more money than them, I'm from a better class of person than them, and we go into the superiority, the conceit, arrogance. Or sometimes it's just I'm the same as them. They're no better than me, they don't deserve better than me because we're all the same. That's another form of conceit. These are the stories we build up, and it's only through developing more self-awareness and examining what's going on that we can unpick the stories a little bit, so we don't just believe them and create more stories and believe them over and over again, because so much of our suffering comes there. Everybody who practices meditation will understand this point. When you come to meditate, you are becoming aware of your attitudes. You observe your current state of mind as you begin meditating on the breath, say. And it's quite common that we will have maybe some inferiority conceit where we say, oh, I'm a hopeless meditator, I'm not mindful, I never experience much peace, I'm no good at this. So of course if we keep believing that and not recognizing it just for what it is, as just a form of conceit, where we actually believe the story, well, it tends to lead us to lose energy, put in less effort to our meditation, and maybe give up quite quickly because we feel we're no good at it. Probably less common, but still happens, as we come in with the superiority conceit. Maybe we say, I've meditated hundreds of times before. I've read all the books, I've heard all the talks, I know what I'm doing. And we sit down and we're sure we're good at it, and we know our mind may still be all over the place, but we are convincing ourselves that we're superior. And that does happen as well. But the aim of the meditation is to bring up mindfulness and recognize mana or conceit for what it is. It's conceit. It's a construction of sense of self, an inner sense of self fed by this dialogue and the attachment with perceptions, memories of who we feel we are and what we've done in the past as well. And then we also put that onto our experience. I'm superior, I'm inferior, I'm the same. We do this all the time, a lot of the time we're unaware of what we're doing. But when we meditate, we start to become aware, and you'll notice. So again, that's why the Buddha said, come back to this starting point of loving kindness, awareness, non-judgmental awareness, what we call the beginner's mind, where you can look at your experience in a more tolerant and accepting way. So if you do have conceit, arrogance, or you have a sense of inferiority and feel you're hopeless, whatever the experience is, you're just observing it with mindfulness rather than buying into it. Then you've got a chance to transcend it, go beyond it, if only in that period of meditation. And the good news is that many people have found great success by investigating this, learning to be more tolerant of themselves, their own views and opinions about themselves, their own sense of conceit, and then also transferring that out into the relationships they have with the people around them, because the less attachment to views and conceit we have, or the less strong attachment, the easier it is to get on with other people, to work with other people, live with other people. So it only leads to benefit. And this isn't to say that the Buddha said we shouldn't have any views on anything at all, but to see the danger of grasping at views, holding on to them, identifying with them so strongly that they become a cause for conflict or disharmony, either within ourselves, within our own mind, or with others. So a view is something you use. You're learning to become mindful and recognize a view as a view, but to be able to hold on to it, but then put it down when it's necessary. Right? Again, in the Metta Sutta we just chanted, you say, by not holding on to fixed views. And what we tend to do is fix a view. We're a bit lazy in our life. We form fixed views about ourselves, other people, the world all the time, and we never examine them, question them, allow for things to evolve or change. Often we just stick with our fixed view. It's right, it's wrong, it's good, it's bad. And that can really clog the mind up and cause a lot of suffering. So the Buddha said you learn to use a view, but also to be able to examine it from different angles and be willing sometimes to let it go and pick up or develop a wiser, better view based on whatever evidence, whatever experience you've been having. Or like Ajahn Chah used to say, a view is something you use like a tool. So like in the monastery, in the forest, we walk around at night, there's no lights, so we use a torch. So you pick up your torch, you shine your torch on the path so you can walk from one place to another in the dark. But once you've got to the place you're going, maybe there's a light there, you can put your torch down. You don't have to carry your torch all day and all night, grasping it firmly. That would be ridiculous. Once the sun comes up, you don't need your torch, you can put it down. Views and opinions can be like that. You can pick them up when it's useful and it's correct, but also you have to be able sometimes to put them down as well. Just use them correctly, but then be able to let go and not grasp so tightly. Because sometimes the views we hold, when they are fixed views, even a good view or apparently good view can cause harm when it's challenged or someone looks at things from a different way. Even a view of what we feel is right, correct, can still cause pain and suffering to ourselves or others when we grasp it too tightly. So we become judgmental. So again, the conceit comes up and you might say, oh, they don't understand the Buddhist teachings as well as I do. And so we look down on someone else or criticize them. Or sometimes we do it to ourselves. I don't know anything, I'm hopeless. So views and conceit are often what we first encounter when we meditate. And we're looking at them and trying to develop awareness, views and conceit, and the perceptions we build up around ourselves, other people, the practice itself. In the time of the Buddha, there was one nun. Nanda was his half-sister. She had this problem, a very common problem with meditators. She actually entered the robes like many of her family members. They're from the ruling class of India, because the Buddha was from the ruling family. And it was almost like a fashion that his relatives started to become monks and nuns following the Buddha. And many of them had faith in his teachings and really wanted to practice following him. But some were doing it more just following on, I guess, following on what the others were doing. Oh, they're doing it, I'll do it. So Nanda was one like that. She didn't have strong faith in the Buddha or his teachings. So when she became a nun, she was just kind of following the trend, I guess you could say, as fashion, almost like a fashion at that time. So she always had a lot of self-doubt. Was felt quite inferior to the others, because the others had so much faith. They really put effort into their meditation, listened to the teachings, kept the rules and practices of the monks and nuns, and some of them were becoming enlightened already. She wasn't. Her mind was not peaceful at all. She found it difficult keeping the discipline in the monastery. She had self-doubt. She felt she was not up to it. So she was considering leaving the robes. And many meditators are like that. When we begin, we just face a mind that is not peaceful. We don't feel we have many good qualities. But she was encouraged to stick with it, like we all are. We encourage each other to stick with the practice, because it takes effort and also time and patient effort to bring up that awareness, to get a new angle, look at your state of mind, look at some of these attachments you have more and see them more clearly. So she was encouraged to stick with it. But her main problem was she was really attached to beauty. You know, before she was a nun, she looked beautiful. She was a beautiful woman, had lovely clothes, all kinds of ornaments, jewelry, perfumes. And she never really got beyond that. Even though she shaved her head, became a nun, she always had a longing for that. So the Buddha knew that. The Buddha knew her main attachment was for beauty, the beauty of the world. So he just said, well, just be patient with it. Stick with the practice. Don't get too caught out or upset by what others say, because some of the other nuns would say, oh, you're just practicing because you hope that you'll make some merit, some good karma, and next life you'll be born even more beautiful than this life. You know, you've got the wrong motivation. He said, don't listen to that. Just keep practicing patiently. And eventually there was a time where he thought she was ready to hear the Dhamma, and he called her to listen to a talk. And as he was talking, he created a vision for her of a beautiful lady, far more beautiful than herself. You might say the most beautiful lady in the world. And as he was discussing the Dhamma, talking about impermanence, not self, and the way that human body is something that gradually gets old, dies, degenerates, not to be attached to, he made this beautiful lady start to age before Nanda's eyes. And she's like a vision from being young, beautiful, become middle-aged, old age, started to have a bent back and the hair turning grey and the teeth falling out and wrinkles appearing on the skin, became humpback and gradually like an 80, 90-year-old woman, and then fall down weak and then dying right in front of her. It's just a vision, mind-made vision, but it was enough. At that moment she was finally peaceful enough, and she had enough faith in the Buddha to follow his reasoning as he taught, and so she attained stream entry. She actually finally, her meditation came together. But the Buddha said, it's a good example of somebody who has that sense of inferiority in the beginning. Can't meditate, can't really do it, don't really understand what the Buddha's talking about, but sticking with it to the point where they finally had an enlightenment experience. And that's what we have to do. We have to be aware of our conceit and recognize it for what it is. If we have a sense of being hopeless, or have doubts, or feel I don't have the barami, I'm not the one to do it, recognize that as conceit or as a view, rather than believing in it, actually following it. This is the where you're actually changing your mind for the better. You're starting to educate it using the meditation in this way, bringing up mindfulness and starting to recognize what's there. And we have to accept if we have a lot of self-aversion, well, that's our starting point. We'll keep bringing up the mindfulness and using loving kindness. If we have a lot of arrogance, or we think we're superior and we know better than everyone else, well, that's also going to be an obstacle. If we don't recognize it as conceit and views, it will also stop the mind gathering together into samadhi, because we'll keep attaching to that view, I'm better, I know. It will close the mind off to receiving new knowledge. So whether that's from a teacher or from our own insight, the mind, if it feels it knows, well, it's not going to look for anything deeper or higher. It's going to be satisfied with that. And it also tends to lead to conflict with others, because we feel, I know, they don't know, or I know more than them, I'm better than them. So whatever way conceit and views are manifesting, these are where we have to establish mindfulness, be very patient and look and learn and let go gradually, accepting them for what they are but letting go. If we keep doing that, then we get better at it, and we're not so gullible to our own opinions on things. And basically we fool ourselves, we trick ourselves into suffering by telling ourselves the wrong story. You might sit down to meditate and straight away you have a negative state of mind, and if you believe that, then that will colour your meditation for that day. I'm a good meditator, I'm a bad meditator, I can do it, I can't. Or sometimes it's other people. Other people say negative things about us and we take it too much to heart. We do it really with every aspect of our life, don't we? We form opinions and views and they colour our perceptions, and then we add that on to our relationships or our place of work or where we're going, what we're doing. We're constantly bringing up perceptions, and if we believe them too much, well, they affect our whole experience. I remember when I was in Thailand, I began Wat Panana Chat, which is a cremation ground. It's an old forest, jungle forest outside the village, and it's a cremation ground. And when I first went to live there, I felt very happy, because even though it was a damp jungle area and they regularly had cremations there, I just looked at it as a very peaceful forest, not a lot of disturbance. And it was a good place to meditate, so I had a lot of very peaceful meditations. But as soon as I started to learn Thai, I noticed all the lay visitors came, they all had a lot of fear, because it's a cremation ground, and the Thais are brought up with this perception that there are ghosts everywhere, especially in cremation grounds. So I was learning about perceptions then. It's like I'd sit down in this cremation ground and feel very peaceful, because it's just trees, the air, the breeze comes through, you're meditating. I was just happy to be meditating. When someone else sits down, a local Thai person sits down, and they hear the leaves rustling on the trees, and they go, "What's that?" Straight away they go, "Is it a ghost?" Because that's their perception. So they have to work through that as they meditated. I maybe had other perceptions to deal with, like, oh, I hate mosquitoes, or do those mosquitoes have malaria? Like, coming from the West, we tend to have a lot of accumulated knowledge, so you know that malaria comes from mosquitoes, so every mosquito becomes a death threat. So like, oh, is this mosquito going to give me malaria? So I had to deal with those perceptions. But the Thais were all dealing with the perception, this place is haunted, a ghost might attack me, do something to me, or what will I do if a ghost comes? So I have to deal with fear, anxiety about that. But that's what we have to deal with, our perceptions and views that we bring along as we start meditating. So the Buddha said, begin your meditation with loving kindness. Recite that sutta if it helps. Set your mind in the right frame of mind, bring up a skillful quality to deal with some of these accumulated views and perceptions that you're going to have to deal with as you meditate. And we all know the simple instruction, watch your breath, breathe in, breathe out. And it's true, that's what we're aiming for, to be mindful of each breath in, each breath out. But at the same time, we have to accept our karma, and there'll be stuff coming up in our mind. So use some of these skillful means that the Buddha gave us. Bring up the loving kindness, the patience, the right attitude, so that you can deal with these perceptions. You know, if you do have fear and anxiety, whether it's about illness or ghosts, bring up the loving kindness just to calm your mind so you can look more closely at your own fear and see it as just a state of mind rather than you, who you are. If you have conceit, I'm better than, I'm worse than, that's maybe what you're having to look at. Same, bring up the loving kindness, bring up the mindfulness, and recognize conceit for what it is, or the attachment to a view. There's one time, a few years after I became a monk, I went on what we call tudong, we go wandering into the forest. I went to a national park. I was living with Lumpur Anand, and then I went to stay at a national park further along the coast, about 100 kilometers away from his monastery. And I went to stay there on my own. I wanted to see what I was like, staying in a forest on my own, camping. And it was a national park, so they said it had wild animals there. But when I arrived, there was one forest ranger who had a little hut on the edge of the park. So I went to meet him first, just to tell him I'm going to stay up on the mountain. And he said, oh yeah, that's fine. There's a nice waterfall where you can drink the water and you can bathe there. And there's no wild animals around here. There's no tigers, nothing dangerous. No, you'll be fine. So he gave me a very nice early perception. There's no wild animals, it's all good. So I went into the forest. He said, there's no malaria, it's all good. So I started my meditation very happily, staying there. And the first day, I meditated during the afternoon. About 5 p.m. I was sitting just on the floor of the forest because I didn't have any building or anything, I was just camping. And I was meditating peacefully, and then I heard a noise next to me. And I opened my eyes, and down on the side was a huge cobra, really fat, big cobra, powerful-looking cobra. So I just turned my head to look at it, and turning my head must have stirred it up a little bit. So the cobra shot up. As I'm sitting on the floor, it shot up. Its head was almost at my head's height. It came up off the ground a couple of feet, the way they do, threatening. And I was just sitting there, so I was just looking at him, and because I had moved my head slightly, he lunged at me, at my chest. But he didn't bite, he just kind of did it as a kind of threat, I guess. And then he went back, and I was watching the cobra, and he's just sort of, I wasn't sure whether he was going to lunge again or what he was going to do, so I couldn't help myself. I just said, why did you do that? I didn't hurt you. And the cobra looked at me kind of confused and then shot off into the forest, disappeared, and I never saw it again. So the next morning I went down to see the park ranger on my way to collect food in the village, and I said, oh, there are some wild animals here. The cobra came yesterday. He said, oh really? Oh, I've never seen them here before. Oh, okay. So already the perception starts to change. You go somewhere thinking there's nothing there, and then you realise, oh, there is something there. So life is like that, isn't it? It's full of unexpected things. And then he said, well, at least there's no tigers here. I'm sure there's no tigers. We've never had any tigers here, no problems with tigers. So that day I went back to my place in the forest, meditating, and about 10 p.m. I was meditating. Sure enough, a tiger came by and started growling at me in the dark, and I didn't have any candles or anything, so I was just sitting in the dark with this tiger growling at me. So I turned my torch on. I wanted to save my batteries, but I thought I'd better turn it on. And the tiger moved away. I was on the waterfall, one side of this waterfall stream, and so he moved to the other side of the stream and just growled for about an hour or two, growling at me. And so I just meditated, contemplating my fear and my attachment. And then in the morning I went down again, past the forest ranger's hut. And he came out to put some food in my bowl. And I said, you know, you do have tigers here, actually. He said, huh? Oh, okay. We've never had them before. So when you meditate, it's like that. You get a perception in your mind, a view, oh, no tigers or no wild animals, puts you in one state of mind, but then maybe the evidence comes along to prove that wrong. Or you might start off, oh, I can meditate, but then you have a really distracted state of mind, and oh, looks like I can't meditate. You can never be sure what's coming along when you practice meditation. Whatever's in your mind can be unpredictable, different views, different perceptions come up, your state of mind changes, or what's going on the outside. How the world is, there can be a pandemic, or the pandemic passes, like at the moment in Melbourne they're saying, oh, 0 cases, no new cases every day, so everyone's thinking, oh, it's finished, but then who knows, maybe the coronavirus will come back one day and suddenly a surge and it returns again. Not sure. So we have to be able to look at our perceptions, our views on things, whether it's on a place or a person or ourselves, and know that they're not always 100% reliable. It's not sure. And this is the practice of vipassana. It's not sure. What you're seeing the thought, but the thought is not true, is it? It's just a thought. It's your superficial description of your view of the world at that moment, view of who you are, where you are, what's going on. And it may be useful to use the thinking process to work things out, of course, but also it tricks us. And we start believing things that are not true, seeing something that's not there, or thinking something's not there when it is there. You can't take every thought, every perception, every view, every aspect of this sense of self as true or real. Often it's just a story we're adding on. So Ajahn Chah used to encourage us just to reflect, it's not sure, let's see, wait and see. There's a lot of practices about being patient, watching your mind, watching what it's attaching to, and then waiting to see whether it's true, whether it changes, because it's not sure. Maybe there's a tiger there, maybe not. Maybe there's a ghost, maybe not. Maybe coronavirus is there, maybe it's gone. Who knows? If you live in Melbourne, you know, oh, maybe it will rain, maybe it will be sunny, maybe it will be warm, maybe it will be cold. Not sure. So if you reflect like this regularly in your meditation, it allows you to deal with whatever comes up. Sometimes you have pain, sometimes no pain. Sometimes you're peaceful, sometimes not. All of it becomes food for your contemplation and insight. As you establish mindfulness, you reflect, it's not sure, it's not certain. If you do that, it helps you to deal with whatever experience you have. You don't have to believe every thought and feel up or down, happy or sad. You just know these different mental states as arising, passing away, or feelings in the body, sometimes painful, sometimes not. You just know them as changing feelings. And if you have that kind of insight and you cultivate it, well, that keeps your mind very steady, very calm inside, even if you can't predict what's going on in the world around you and what's going to happen next. You have some kind of certainty inside because your mind is more with the Dhamma, seeing the Dhamma. So maybe today I'll just say this much for this occasion, and wish you all well in your practice.